بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
إنك لا تنادي فهبوا يا بني قومي أسودا أعيدوا للدنا أمجاد عصر وفلوا بالحديد لنا القيودا.
Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. I'm making this video specifically about a topic on the subject of the caravan raids that the Muslims were involved in the early years of Islamic history. Now, I make this video for two reasons. One, because one of my subscribers asked me to do it because someone, coincidentally enough, had mentioned to them, your prophet, raided innocent caravans and, raped and pillaged and massacred people, blah, 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 blah. I'm an ignorant hater. Anyway, that was one thing that someone had said. The other reason is that this person I've been referring to as the guy who's been speaking with me, I haven't mentioned his name at this point. I don't know if anyone has also spoken with him, also mentioned to me the same exact thing. He mentioned that, the Prophet Muhammad, he raided caravans and he, raped and pillaged and enslaved innocent women and children, and, how can you defend someone like that? Isn't that horrible? When you've studied history for a long time, and when you've studied religion, and then you study the history of religion for as long, as I have, and even less than what I have, if you just know the history of your own religion well enough, when someone says something like that to you, you just know they're full of crap, or they're ignorant. Both can be hand in hand, but you can take your pick on which one is where they're really coming from. I say that because if you're going to say that the caravan raids done by the Muslims actually had anything to do with massacring, raping, pillaging, enslaving men, women, and children, then you're ignorant. Plain and simple, you're ignorant. And in this video, I'm going to prove this. The thing is that, let me be very clear. My German friend who I'm dedicating this video to was very specific, and my friend, if you have forgotten what you said you deleted our PMs back and forth with each other. I still have them saved if you'd like to see them. You were specific in saying caravan raids, and if you'd meant that on purpose or not, your ignorance will benefit me one way or another. The caravan raids you are referring to are the raids that occurred before the Battle of Badr. And so we will be dealing with those specifically. The other raids that you could have been referring to were not caravan in nature. The majority of them that I am aware of were not caravan in nature. They were strategic tactics against the Qurayshi tribes and the various tribes that supported them in oppressing the Muslims. The caravan raids you are referring to, we're going to look at those specifically, and we're going to see whether they, and other haters like you, whether they were of the nature that involved the following: raping, pillaging, murdering, enslaving innocent men, women, and children. If I can prove that they were not, then you're mistaken, sir, and you need to recant your statements. Now, to give a little background about what these caravan raids were, for those of you who are wondering what the heck is Ozzy talking about, what are these caravan raids, I turn to Karen Armstrong's Muhammad, a Biography of the Prophet, page 169, and she gives a background about what was the deal with these caravan raids. Now, it mentions here that that the Prophet had a much more modest offensive in mind. The raid, which had long been a sort of national sport in Arabia and an accepted way of making ends meet when times were hard. The immigrants had very few opportunities of earning a living in Medina. They were mostly bankers, financiers, and merchants, and knew next to nothing about date farming, or even if there had been any land available for them to begin their own agricultural ventures. They were dependent on the helpers for their livelihood and would become a drain on the Ummah unless they found an independent source of income. Everybody could do that. What the brilliant young merchant Abd al-Rahman had done on arrival in Medina, and simply asked his way to the market and had quickly created income for himself by dint of successful buying and selling. She continues on to mention that these raids that were conducted, and she mentions them and we'll get to them in a second, were the following. It was done that the caravans that were the goods were the main object, but not but to avoid fighting. Therefore, it was under the Arab culture that the raids were specifically done, as she says. They were not supposed to have anything to do with actual physical fighting, but just to nab some of the goods at the end of the caravan that were not protected to gain some economic goods. So the point of that was, from a cultural point of view, this was done by the Arabs as almost an economic fashion. Now some people might say, well, that's theft. He's raiding them, so therefore he's stealing. Well, we know, if you look at the Quranic revelation that was given before, God specifically mentioned that permission was given to the Muslims to fight those who were oppressing them. I turned to the biography of the Prophet, the life of Muhammad, by the scholar Abdul Hamid Siddiqui. He's a famous scholar who translated into English Sahih Muslim, the Hadith collection, did extensive commentary on it. I own this collection, and he did this biography. He mentions another reason for the raids was the following. It says that the Quraysh, mortified at the escape of the Holy Prophet along with his devout companions and jealous of his growing power in Medina, kept a straight watch over the Muslims who had been left behind in Mecca, of whom the majority were women or helpless slaves, and persecuted them in every possible way. In addition to all that, they began to make preparations on a large scale for an all-out attack on Medina, which they believed would exterminate the nascent power of Islam. But before fighting this decisive battle, they were anxious to enlist the support and sympathizers of the non-Muslim tribes living around Medina. This objective was to achieve by various means, the chief among which was to display their power and thus impress upon them their unrivaled strength and compared to that of the Muslims. They believed that the free and unchecked movements of the caravans of Syria passing along the shores of the Red Sea would provide sufficient proof that their might, and thus the tribes who were living on these routes would be terrorized, and the Muslims would therefore lose their sympathy. In pursuit of this strategy, caravans after caravans of Meccans went to Syria. These caravans had shrewd agents who sowed discontent and sedition among the people of Medina and tried to enlist their sympathies to the cause of wiping out Islam out of existence. Therefore, end quote, therefore the Prophet, as Siddiqui, the scholar, mentions, knew that to actually stand up against these caravans as a military strategic tactic, it would show that these tribes, the Muslims, were not weak and therefore could not be intimidated, and therefore others should not be intimidated by the Qurayshi power. Now, I'm going, and by the way, all these authors, I have other biographies as well. Barnaby Rogerson, The Prophet of Muhammad, a biography. Martin Link's Muhammad, his life based on the earliest sources. And Muhammad the Prophet by R.M.M. Abdur Rahim, all based their biographies off of the most authentic material available in Islamic jurisprudence and history and theology. Now, to further my point, I'm going to quote Ibn Ishaq. Now, I do this because the haters use Ibn Ishaq the most, so I feel like getting them right where it hurts. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm going to cite you the references. Ibn Ishaq, The Life of Rasulullah, we're starting at page 281, going to about, let's see here, 286. And it mentions all of the raids. It mentions the raid of Wahdan, which was the first raid, the expedition of Abdid ibn al-Harith, mentions Hamza's expedition to the seashore, the raid of Buhat, the raid of al-Ushura, the raid of Sa'd Abu Waqas, the raid of Safwan, which is the first raid of Bidr, etc. Oh, and in the expedition of Abdullah bin Jash, and the coming down of They Will Ask You About the Sacred Month. Ibn Ishaq says that all these raids ended in peace. All of them ended in peace. The Muslims showed up and they made peace, or they missed the caravan. There was no fighting done in any of the raids. The last raid before the Battle of Badr, the commander who was leading the Muslim expedition jumped the mark. He did actually accidentally attack one of the caravans and brought some captives back to Medina. The Prophet was actually angry with them for doing this. God sent down a verse saying that yes, it is a bad thing to fight in the sacred month, but what's worse is not fighting in self-defense against people who are oppressing you. But the captives were later released, and one of the captives were so impressed with the Muslim hospitality, he converted to Islam. What the point I'm trying to make here by making this video is that what we are missing here is this myth that these raids were a massacre, raping, enslaving, and pillaging. I don't see it anywhere. I have all these biographies based on authentic sources. Ibn Ishaq, of course, is questionable, but Ibn Hisham vouches for the authenticity of these reports on these caravan raids. If anything, this was seen as a military economic tactic, which had, as I've proven, necessity. And furthermore, the majority of them, except for one, ended in peace. So to say that these are somehow massacring and negative is a lie. Thank you for watching. Peace be with you all.